Hello, I apologize. It's been a few weeks since I've shared some words on the Parsha. I was just in the Holy Land, in the land of Israel, and was not able to share the thoughts on the Parsha through this platform. But I did want to share an idea now about Parshas Chukas. It's one of the most enigmatic episodes in the entire Torah, one of the most tragic episodes in the Torah, in which the Jewish people are complaining and wanting water to drink. Moshe gets fed up. He's told by God to speak to a rock, and the rock will give forth water. Moshe, in his frustration, he hits the rock. The rock produces water. And at this point, the Torah tells us the following. It says that Moshe and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, Shimu na hamorim, listen now, you rebels. Should we get water for you out of this rock? And then the pasuk says, two psukim later, Hashem is angry about this. He says, "V'yomer Hashem al Moshe." God tells Moshe, "Vel Aaron, yag lo emantem bi," because you didn't believe in me, lahakti sheni, to sanctify my name in front of the entire Jewish people. Therefore, you will not bring this people into the promised land. You will not bring the people into Israel. Very fascinating that because of this seemingly small sin of hitting the rock instead of speaking to it, Moshe is giving the devastating punishment of not being able to live out his life's dream of going into Israel, bringing his people into Israel, seeing the job to its conclusion from bringing them out of servitude and slavery into the promised land. Very interestingly, the commentaries discuss what exactly was so bad about what he did. It doesn't seem that bad. Rashi comments on Maseches Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Aleph. He says the following, that it was due to the sin when Moshe called them morim. Moshe called them rebels. Because of that, he was punished, and he was not able to enter the land of Israel because he called them these rebels. And it truly begs a question of what's so bad about calling them rebels? Why was he therefore unable to bring them into Israel? And furthermore, what is God telling them when he says, because you didn't believe in me to sanctify my name? Where do we see any lack of faith on Moshe's part and his lack of belief in God, and therefore not sanctifying God's name? So there's an incredible sefer called the Nesivos Shalom, in which the Slonim Rebbe gives an incredible insight into this episode, which has always left me scratching my head, wondering how it makes any sense. And he just shares something absolutely incredible. And he says the following, that he notes that it does seem to be that because they specifically, Moshe called them rebels, that's ultimately why he was punished, more so than hitting the rock. And there's a medrash that speaks this out, and he says that when you have a leader of a generation, says the connection between the leader and the community is very intense. It's like a body and a soul, and there needs to be trust between them. And he says that the Jewish people need to believe that the leader has the ability to bring them and to elevate them from darkness to light, to bring them from low places to high places. Right? You have to believe in your leader that he can help you get to the next level. And this is vital, that the people have this trust in their leader. And similarly, he says, a leader must have faith in the strength of their people. The Jewish leader must have faith in the Jewish people. They must understand that every Jew is a chelik Elokai mimal. Every Jew is a portion of God from above. And even when the Jewish people might sin, their godliness has not left them. That every one of us, God blew into man the breath of God. That means every one of us has a divine, eternal soul, part of God, that is beautiful and holy and pure. And he says, when there's no such thing with us to have what's called a pagam, to have a true blemish, because as long as we have this godly soul, we're not fundamentally flawed. We're not fundamentally blemished. That we always have the ability to return to our roots, to ascend, to do tshuva, and there's no such thing that we have this blemish, this deep blemish within us. And therefore, he says, the leader must believe that it's always within his ability to inspire his people and to bring them back to their roots, even when his people are in the lowest of places and they seem like they've fallen so far, and then they seem so down. Implanted within them is this, what he calls kochos Elohim, these elevated strengths, that he has the ability to elevate them and lift them up because of the godliness within their soul. And then he says something amazing. He says, when a leader lacks faith in the people he's leading and their ability to return to the goodness, to the truth of who they are, then if he doesn't believe in them, he won't be able to elevate them and to lift them up. And he says further that this perhaps would explain what happened here, right? That when we look back at the episode with Moshe, right? Again, why was he punished so severely? Why was he punished so harshly for calling them rebels? Why could he not specifically bring them into Israel? Why did Hashem say, because you lost faith in me? These are our questions. So if we base perhaps what we just said from the Nesivos Shalom, we can maybe understand the answers to these questions. And Moshe called the Jewish people morim. He said, you are fundamentally rebels. You are not people who are acting out. You are not good people who are acting rebelliously. But he defined them as morim. You are rebels. There's something fundamentally flawed within you. You have a pagam, you have a blemish within you. And therefore, that is why God says that ultimately Moshe was not able to bring the people further. Why? Because he lost faith in their ability to do tshuva, their ability to elevate themselves. He didn't believe in them. He saw they were fundamentally flawed, they were blemished, and therefore that lack of faith he had in them made him unable and unfit to bring them into Israel. And he no longer had that ability to encourage them to do tshuva, to lift them up to a higher level, to bring them into Eretz Yisrael. And this perhaps is what God is telling them, says the Nesivos Shalom. He says, because Yam lo hamantem bi, because you didn't believe in me to sanctify me. What does that mean? Perhaps what that means is that he didn't believe in the godliness, the me, the godliness, the capital M-E, the godliness within each person. Moshe didn't see that. He didn't believe in that within him. He wasn't unable to see it at this point. And he wasn't able to see the godliness inside of them, because if he would have seen the godliness within them, he would have still believed in them and believed that they could elevate themselves and lift themselves up out from this low place that they were in. And he describes how every single person is a conduit for God's presence. The Torah says, we have to build ourselves as mikdashes for God. We have to be ourselves sanctuaries for God's presence, places where God can himself dwell among us in this world. We have to leave room for this godliness within us. And every one of us has that godliness inside of us, because all of us are chelek elokam yamal. And he says this belief, we have this belief in each other because God resides within all of us. And therefore, when God's saying, because you didn't believe in me, perhaps he's saying you didn't believe in the me within all of you. You didn't believe in the godliness within all of the people. And he called them morim, that they're rebels without this godly side of them. And therefore, he was unable to bring them into the Holy Land. So we see that perhaps the transgression of Moshe was in calling them rebels, was that he was denying that he was unable to see that they had this godly spark within them that could return, that could do tshuva. He lost faith in them. And when a leader loses faith in his people, he can't lead them any further. And he didn't see that spark inside of them to bring them to the next level. And therefore, it was time for the next leader to fully emerge. And then he says, and he concludes, just to apply it to all of us, that he said this is a foundational belief that we have for a Jew in every situation we find ourselves in. He says that a yetzer hara, right, our evil inclination, tries to overpower a person, specifically to to keep us down, not just to make us stumble to begin with, but once we stumble, the Yetzer Hara works very hard to keep us down, to tell us, who are you kidding? What are you doing? What can you do? You're so you're so lowly. You've fallen so far. There's nothing you can do. Who do you think you are that you can pick yourself up? That's where the Yetzer Hara comes in to try to mess with us. He tries to seduce us to think that we don't have the ability to overcome the fall that we have endured. And therefore it tries to make us feel a sense of yeush, of despair, not to believe in ourselves. And he says that the foundation of the existence of a Jew is this faith that we have the ability to lift ourselves up because there's godliness inside of us. And whatever situations we find ourselves in, we have the godly divine spark within us. And we can therefore all the time elevate ourselves to pick ourselves up and to achieve greatness, to do tshuva. So, very profound insight on the Parsha to perhaps explain what was wrong with what Moshe did. What was the problem? Why was the punishment that he couldn't lead them into Israel? And the lesson for us, of course, is that whatever situation we find ourselves in, however down we might feel, we understand that we are containing godliness within us. There's that spark within us. No matter how far we feel we've fallen, we can always pick ourselves up and elevate ourselves to the highest heights. A beautiful, beautiful Shabbos.